Alright, today we're going to make creamy chicken and mushroom cavatappi from HelloFresh. Small disclaimer, I don't have a HelloFresh subscription, but I wanted to make this video for those who do and those who don't, so you guys can see how to make this recipe with just a few tips and tricks. So their first step has you bringing a large pot of salted water to a boil. You don't actually need to do this, you can just add pasta straight to the pan and add cold salted water just enough to cover the pasta. Pasta can actually be cooked starting in cold water. This will get you the same result but in less time. Bring that pot of pasta and water to a boil, making sure to scrape occasionally to make sure no pasta sticks to the bowl. Once the water is up to a boil, lower the heat and give it a good stir, then put the lid on. The reason I like to use a lid is because it prevents too much evaporation happening in the pasta water. Okay, while that pasta is boiling, we can get started with everything else. So for the mushrooms, I like to rip the bottoms off. This helps form a stable base on the mushroom, making it easier to cut. Once all your mushrooms are sliced, spread them on a microwave-safe dish in a thin, even layer. We are gonna microwave these mushrooms in 1-minute increments. The reason for that is because the recipe says to cook them on the stovetop. It wants you to get them to a good golden brown color. That takes a while though because mushrooms have so much water that all of it needs to evaporate before they get to that color. They also need a ton of oil to get to that golden brown color if you start them on the stovetop straight away. So, to avoid using too much oil and to cut down on the time it takes for all the water to evaporate, we're going to use the microwave. Microwave for 4 to 5 minutes in 1-minute intervals, and when you're done, it should look like this. While the mushrooms are microwaving, we can get started cutting the green onions. So cut them in half, separating the greens from the whites. Slice the greens into thin rounds and do the same with the whites, making sure to discard the base with all those roots. We will not need those. Next is the garlic. Now yours might come pre-peeled from HelloFresh, but mine isn't. So to solve that, we are going to cut off the base of the garlic and then lay the knife on its side on top of the garlic and give it a good smack. The garlic should release very easily from the skin at this point. And now we can mince the garlic. So slice it up as thin as you can, and then with a fanning motion and using your other hand as a fulcrum for the knife, mince it up to your liking. By now your mushrooms are done being microwaved and ready to be cooked. So let's preheat a pan on medium-high heat, add a bit of oil and spread it around for that non-stick coating. Then, once that starts smoking, we add just a bit more oil and 1 tablespoon of butter. I'm using bacon lard, but the HelloFresh recipe says to use butter. Both will work. Spread it around and then add the mushrooms, making sure to get them all coated in the fat. At this point, you can lower the heat to medium if there's too much smoke, but we let the mushrooms just sit there and fry. While those mushrooms are frying, we can prep the chicken. We want to pat it dry so that it takes on a nice golden color once it cooks. So let's get up paper towels and give them a good pat down. Some of the chicken might stick to the paper towels, but take your time and separate them when necessary. And now to season the chicken with salt, pepper, and the Italian seasoning from the box. When seasoning, try to do it from high up, at least 8 inches above the food. The reason for this is because that way the seasoning gets evenly distributed. If you do it too close, you're just going to get one seasoned spot that's not spread around the whole food. So season the chicken and spread it around, making sure each piece gets coated. Now we need to wash our hands to be clean, and at this point the mushrooms should be golden brown and ready to be removed from the pan. I know the recipe says to keep them in there and add the chicken next to it, but that could overcrowd the pan and lead to steaming the chicken as opposed to searing it, and you won't get a good color that way. Therefore, we take out the mushrooms, add a little more oil, then the chicken. Then the same method as before, making sure the chicken is in an even layer and each piece has good contact with the pan. Then we don't touch it and let it sear. Occasionally we stir and mix it around to make sure all sides, all pieces get a good color, but again, for the most part, you just let it sit there and sear. If you're finding the chicken is sticking to the pan too much, you can solve this by shaking the pan quickly back and forth. Once the chicken is mostly cooked, we add back the mushrooms, the onion whites, and the garlic. A good way to evenly distribute all of the ingredients is by shaking the pan. The key to this is not to go up and down, it's to go forward and back. If you move forward and then back quickly enough, the food shouldn't fall out of the pan, it should jump and return back. Chef John from Food Wishes has a really good video on how to do this. I'll link that in the description below. Next, we add the cream sauce base and the stock concentrate. Now, I forgot to record this in the video, but really, you just dump them in and gently stir it around, coating all of the ingredients. Once that's done, we bring the mixture up to a boil and then lower the heat and just let it simmer away. While that is simmering, we can check back on our pasta. Once it's cooked, remove that half cup of pasta water and drain the rest. Return the pasta back to the bowl it was boiling in and add your cream mushroom chicken to that bowl. HelloFresh has you add the pasta to the frying pan instead, but I find that mine is too small to fit everything, so we're going to add it to the pasta bowl instead because it's bigger. Spread everything around to make sure it's evenly distributed. At this point, you can turn the heat back on if you think your cream sauce has not reduced enough, but this is optional. If your pasta doesn't have that saucy, glossy look to it and isn't coating well, then feel free to add that reserved pasta water in increments until you get to where you want it to be. I didn't feel like I needed to do this, so I didn't. Once that's done, we add half the Parmesan and the 1 or 2 tablespoons of butter that HelloFresh calls for, stirring around to make sure they melt and emulsify into the sauce. Finally, right before serving, we add the onion greens, making sure to sprinkle from on high up for even distribution. And with that, you are done. Your pasta dish is ready to be served.